Hey everyone, Sam Signorelli, HM Fencing. Welcome back to Can Haz Armory. Today let's go over setting up a club, a permanent location with the scoring gear. A lot of clubs, when they start out, will do the same thing we do at a division event in a school gym. They'll pull up to the location, unload, set the gear up, fence. When they're done, pack up and leave. So it's very, very temporary. And the advantage there is you're only paying for the space rent and nothing else. The gear is easy to access and whatnot. What if you have a permanent location like Levitsky, like Swordplay, like LAI, or other clubs where you have a permanent building, go in, everything's just sitting there ready to go? I have seen very few clubs with a permanent setup where any thought has gone into maintenance of the gear, specifically how to get to the gear to fix it and what the impact's going to be, because they're worried about simply getting the stuff up and leaving enough room to fence and doing their thing there. And then maintenance is usually looked at as kind of this, when we deal with it, which can cause issues. So let's talk about that if you're setting a club up. Number one, the reels. Where are you going to put them? If they're on the floor, let's say this is the strip. So it's going this way, and my hand's the reel. You don't want to put it here, it's in the way, right? You could put it here at the corner, but it's also in the way. What if you have a lefty who retreats into it, or somebody's in a flesh? Put the reel a little farther side, a little farther back, so it's out of the way of the field of play, especially if you don't have the runoff. Right? Keep it there. Also, orient the reel properly, not straight. Orient this way slightly. So if it's on the outside of the strip, you want angled so it is pointing at the inside of the opposite end. And the reason that is to minimize the cable rubbing against the cable guide, because as I showed in earlier videos, the cable guide picks up dust and dirt slapping on the floor, acts like abrasive, it cuts through the cable guide, which then cuts the cable, which then cuts the wire, which means you have to fix it. So orientation is a thing. Also keep in mind, it's a good idea to secure the reel down in some fashion, either with some kind of barrier around it or something like that, because especially on omens, if you pull on it, it's gonna, if the cable's down here, you pull on it, it's gonna torque around this way, which is why the cable guide always chews to the outside, because the reel is torquing around and pulling it there. This is on reels where the reels mounted horizontally. On a vertical reel like Leon Paul, that doesn't happen. It does happen because the reel bounces around there, but not to the same effect, because it doesn't torque the same direction. You could also mount the reel up off of the floor. Swordplay had this. Orange County Fencing Center had this, where they're up on shelves about 7 to 8 feet off the floor, and the cable hung down so you can grab it. And it was on shelf. Again, angle them in and also angle them down for the same purpose, to aim at that far corner. Also, make sure you have something in front so it doesn't come off the shelf. A little barrier, a couple inch high barrier in front with a gap for the cable is perfectly fine, because you don't want the thing coming out and falling, hitting somebody in the head. That would really be bad. Where are you gonna put the cables? You could run them along the ceiling. Don't, because it's hard to get to if you have an issue. Swordplay had one where the worker who was putting stuff up, I wasn't around for this, because I just don't remember what I'm doing. He hung boxes from the ceiling, which is fine. And when he ran the cable on the ceiling, he was securing it. Well, he got to one spot, and he was screwing with staples. One of the staples went through the cable and shorted two lines together. So I could not fix that. I couldn't find where it was, first off, because I couldn't pull the cable down. So that strip was down to simply plug another cable in and make sure he didn't do it this time, and didn't staple it through the cable. You could go under the floor. That has other issues though. Under the floor, if you have sport court flooring, it could damage the cable. I've seen it happen where the cable was under the floor. They did not cut a channel for the cable. They didn't think it'd be a problem. And over years, folks walking out the cable supports eventually bit into the cable itself and broke it and had to replace the entire bloody thing. This is a club where the box strip on a wall went 12 feet up, and it was really a nightmare to try and replace that stuff. You could, if you have a sprung floor, you could leave a channel for the wire to sit in, so it's below floor level, but it's out of the way, or put a carpet run over the top of it, leave it on top of the floor. That way, it's easy to get to and easy to maintain. Also, if you want to take anything out, like you're renting gear out for a movie shoot, you can take it down easy. If it's mounted permanently, it's gonna be hard to do. The boxes themselves. Oh, and also back to the reels. Leave a maintenance loop at the behind the reel. What I mean is, here comes the cable. It's into the reel. No, leave a couple of feet of looped cable behind that before you plug it into the reel for maintenance, because stuff does break. You need room to play with it. At Swordplay, we had a situation years ago where we redid the entire side of the club, and the owner at the time did not call me down to make sure I was supervising the workers who were not fencers. They were construction guys, and they did the work decent, but they did not follow my instructions as far as maintenance loop behind the reels and the boxes, and they cut the cable just long enough to reach. Well, if there was a problem, I couldn't have fixed it without having to splice wire together. Fortunately, the box on the floor, it had a box around it to hold it in place and never moved. But I lived in fear the entire time we were there after that happening. If you have an armor, listen to your armor, especially those who's talking about. Leave a maintenance loop so you have that ability to fix it. Try not to use quick disconnects between where you're approaching the box, because that's another failure point. If the disconnect fails, you can't fix it. I had a club where it had quick disconnects, and every time I go to the club, they ask me to splice one or two of them back together again, so it's more of a direct line. Also, please do not ever use this crap for a floor cord. This is garbage. I said in another video, it's stiff, it's thin, it's cheap, but it's crap. If you're gonna buy a cord from like Home Depot or something, buy a 4-line cord that's more flexible and has more strands of wire to it. Realistically, just honestly go to a main fencing vendor and buy some floor cord that's designed for the purpose. That's it for the cabling. For the boxes, this is typically a problem with Faveros. Most of the boxes, SGs or Black Box or whatever, have everything built in there: the power supply and the cable connections and the floor and the grounding cable connections built into the casing. Favero doesn't do that. Favero has two different ways. They have a box with a table mount that plugs in the back, and it has all the connection. It has the ground cable, both floor cords, and the power connection in that cable house, in that stand. So if you need to move to take the thing off for maintenance, unplug them and take the box. They also have a wall mount version, which is flat against the wall, doesn't have the table mount, and you have to open the back of the box up and physically connect all the lines and the power directly to terminal blocks inside on the circuit board, which makes it really difficult to take down if you have to do maintenance of the box, or if you want to test the box. One way you can do that is make a small shelf for the box. Even if it's 10 feet off the floor, make a small shelf, and you can either mount it directly through the holes in the table stand to that shelf. Or what I did at Swordplay was to take a mending plate, basically aluminum plate about yay big, from the construction section of Home Depot. Has a couple screw holes in it. It's wider. It's longer than the base is wide. And I put a few washers under it and screwed that to the shelf that the box sat on. And the base plate simply slipped underneath it. Slightly snug fit, held it in place perfectly. The times that I take the box down, it was unplug, pull the box out, run. If I had to take the thing off a box hanging from the ceiling or a wall mount, I wouldn't have done that. It boils down to making sure that when you design a club, try and think how it was going to work. You have to do maintenance. If you have an armor, ask him, how would you set this up? How can you set it up for maintenance and not interfere with the club? If armor wants to do something that's interfere with the club, okay, go what the club needs. But if the armor gives a suggestion that can work for the club and work for the armorer, go for it. Because the quicker you get that stuff fixed, the quicker to come back up, especially if you have limited strips to work. If you have 2 strips and one's down, you got a bunch of folks, you gotta get the other ones fixed. So just think about that kind of stuff when you're designing a club. And that's what I got. As always, happy armoring.